Hey everybody, so today in this video we're going to talk about finding the slope of a line when graphed, and we're also going to talk about how we graph lines given an equation. So let's go ahead and start by finding the slope of a line. And there's lots of different ways that you can find the slope of a line, but when you're finding the slope of a line that is graphed, as in this picture here, the easiest way is to locate 2 points on the line and use those 2 points to determine the slope. Now remember, the slope is always going to be a fraction. Okay, so the fraction for slope is, let me fix that point here. It's going to be rise over run. So to determine rise over run, we use our 2 points, and I always start with the lowest point, and I ask myself, how do I get from this point here to this point here? Well, first of all, let's talk about the rise. To get from this point here to this point here, I need to travel upwards 2 units to get on the same level as that point. So my rise in this case, since I'm traveling up, is going to be a positive 2. My run, which is my left and right movement, would be to travel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units to the right. And since I'm traveling to the right, and on a number line moving to the right is a positive movement, my run would be a positive 5. So the slope of this line is simply 2 over 5. It's that easy. Let's look at another one. So here we have a line, and again we have 2 points that are on the line, and we want to find the slope of the line. So we always first find our numerator, which is the rise, then we work on finding the denominator, which is the run. So again, I always start with the bottom point and ask myself, how do I get from this point to this point? Well, first of all, I need to travel upwards 1, 2, 3 units. And again, since I'm traveling up, that is a positive 3. Now my run is to move left or right, and in this case, I have to move to the left 1 unit to get over to this second point. So since I'm moving to the left on a number line, when we move to the left, that is a negative movement, my run is going to be a negative 1. So the slope of this line is going to be 3 over negative 1. You can also write that as just a negative 3 over 1. Same idea. Okay, so let's now talk about how we graph these lines given an equation. And to begin graphing a line, one of the easiest ways to graph a line is to make a table of values. So let's go ahead and make our table. So my table is going to consist of an x column and a y column. Now when you're graphing a line, you have to have a minimum of 2 points, but we're going to go ahead and graph 4 different points so that we're sure that the points we have are going to form the correct line. Now, when you're making your table, you can pick any value of x that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the values 0, 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to plug these values into my equation, or input them into our x's, and find out what the value of y is. So these are my inputs, and what I get will be my output. So when I put a 0 in for x, 6 times 0 is 0, minus 5 gives me a negative 5. When I put a 1 in for x, 6 times 1 is 6, minus 5 gives me a 1. When I put a 2 in for x, 6 times 2 is 12, minus 5 gives me 7. And when I put a 3 in for x, 6 times 3 is 18, minus 5 gives me 13. So I've got 3 points that I'm going to use to go ahead and graph my line. So let's begin by graphing the first point, 0, comma, negative 5. So we begin at the origin, we move 0 to the left or to the right, and we move down 5. And there's our first point. Our second point is going to be 1, 1. So at the origin, we go right 1, up 1. Our next point is 2, 7, and again we start at the origin, so we go right 2, up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And our last point, 3, 13, won't fit on our graph. It's actually going to end up somewhere up in this neighborhood right here. But that's okay. I've got 3 points that I can use to graph my line. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my line tool, and I'm going to go ahead and graph a line that passes directly through these 3 points. So, using the table that we created, I've graphed the line y equals 6x minus 5. Let's try one more. Here's the line y equals negative x divided by 2 plus 4. And again, I want to make a table for this equation, this function, and then I want to use that table to graph the function, or to graph the line. So again, I'm going to have an x column, I'm going to have a y column, and I'm going to pick 4 values of x. Any 4 values of x would work. Now I'm noticing in this particular equation, my x is getting divided by 2. So to make my math a little bit easier, I'm going to pick even numbers so that I don't have to deal with decimals when I'm doing my calculations. So the first value of x I'll pick is 0, then I'll pick 2, then I'll pick 4, and then I'll pick 6. So when I plug 0 in, a negative 0 divided by 2 is just a 0, plus 4 gives me a value of 4 for y. When I put the input 2 in for x, that would be a negative 2 divided by 2 gives me a negative 1, plus 4 gives me an output value of 3. Now I'll put in a 4 for x, which becomes negative, so negative 4 divided by 2 gives me negative 2, plus 4 gives me a positive 2 as an output value. Finally, the last, and you can kind of see a little pattern here, probably, can't you? I'm going to go ahead and put a 6 for my x here, so the 6 becomes negative. Negative 6 divided by 2 gives me negative 3, plus 4 gives me, as you probably would have anticipated, a 1. So now I've got 4 points that I can use to graph my line. I'm going to begin by graphing the point 0, 4. Starting at the origin, we move left or right 0, and we move up 4, graphing our first point. The next point, 2, 3. Again, we start at the origin. We move 2 to the right, and up 3. The next one is 4, 2. So we're going to begin at the origin again. We're going to move 4 to the right, and we're going to go up 2. And the last one, 6, 1. Again, we start at the origin, and we go over 6 units and up 1 unit. So I've got points, plenty of them, to graph my line. Now I'm going to go ahead and extend a line that passes through these points. That's a terrible line. Let me try that again. There we go. That's a little bit better. I like to draw my line so that it extends well through the points so that you recognize the fact that the line is not from here to here and then it just stops. The line actually travels forever and ever and ever in this direction and forever and ever and ever down in this direction. These are just 4 points that happen to sit on the line that we're using to help us graph the line. All right, I hope this video helped you discover a little bit more about slope and also about how we graph linear equations or graph functions. Have a great day, you guys.